Hey guys, welcome to Hard Time Strongmen Podcast. This is 6. I'm here with 7. Today we are talking about your community town meeting. And when I'm talking about that, I mean your community preparedness.
Town meeting.
Yeah. This is the kind of thing that you would put together in times of, say, natural disaster or maybe civil unrest, that kind of thing. Just some sort of uncertainty. If there's something major going on with the town where you need to be prepared, probably should get ahead of something, this is what you're going to be doing.
Florida on a Tuesday.
Oh my God, you're not wrong. We're over here facing like our third or fourth hurricane of the season. I've lost count at this point. I'm just hoping this Cat 5 doesn't hit us.
Oh, jeez. Community preparedness. This is something that we push a lot. This is one of, this is attached to several of our core values. When we talk about training up a bear class of man, we talk about homestaying, medical, shoot, move, communicate, your basic warrior stuff. But community building is, one of the, if not the most important, thing on that list. So town meetings, it's a, cutesy way of us to tell you to get with your neighbors, get with your family, and get a plan together so that you guys can weather whatever storm, comes your way, because we are currently in hard times. It's only going to get worse. So getting your communities together, being self-sufficient, being decentralized, that is the best way that you're going to weather this, and that, you can prepare for the years to come. This is a legacy task, getting a community together and organize something that you can pass down to your kids, pass down that value to your kids. And it's how you protect you and yours.
So the topics of this that we're going to be talking about mainly are going to be food, water, fire. Stop me if you've heard this before. Power, security, shelter. You've all heard this. Like, this is stuff that we've preached before on previous episodes. This is the combo of basic pillars of survival mixed with, your security, your situational awareness. This is a culmination of everything that we have been pushing.
This is preparedness in the confines
in context
of not just you, but getting your community on board, and how you can work together in all of these things as a community.
Right. So let's hit the first pillar right here. Well, actually, I don't remember what order the pillars are, but
Water, shelter, fire, food. So be it.
I was waiting on you to actually get that. So anyway,
shut up. I can only Google so fast. No, I mean,
we're talking food. Food.
Well, food is
short term and long term. Yeah. Short and long term we're talking about here. So in the short term, you need to be able to have 1 month of food per person. Not just you, but everybody there. Everybody in the community needs per head. Thank you. 1 month of food per person. You need to keep in mind your dietary restrictions. Some people are going to be lactose intolerant. Some people are going to be
diabetic.
Soy boys. Some people are going to be diabetic. This food needs to be palatable. This food needs to be palatable. This food also needs to be just palatable, but, not moldy.
Well, so I threw palatable in there because, you see a bunch of the like the buckets or the crates of, freeze-dried food and,
oh God,
everything else, right? Or like protein shakes or whatever, right? And yeah, in an emergency situation where you're actually worried about your caloric intake, right? You're going to eat what you're going to eat. However, if you have kids, that's something to consider, because my 4-year-old in first world country on a Tuesday grazes through our house. If I offer him a legit meal, he rarely takes it because he's a 4-year-old and they're little monsters.
I was about to ask if your kids
they're horribly picky, but and that's not saying that you have to, have the most delicious meals in your prep, but have that be a consideration, right? Because the more time that you're wasting on trying to get someone to actually eat the food that you're preparing, it's time that you can be spent doing something else.
Right.
when it all comes down to it. And, like you said, making sure that your food is protected from the elements, it has a decent shelf life. You're actually rotating your stock so that you don't have a bunch of food that is all going to expire at the same time. Keep them protected from pests, from looters, what have you.
You also don't want your food to have been sitting on the shelf like 15 years past the expiration date. Thank you, U.S. Army. I just want to throw that out there. And in the long term, you need to keep in mind that this is stuff that you need to be able to produce yourself. This means that you need to be able to grow, to harvest your own food. You need to be having meat on hand if you eat meat. I mean, some people don't. I mean, some people eat the food that we eat. So you need to be keeping rabbits. You need to be keeping chickens, cattle, goats, gardens.
So your short term goals for food consumption, keep in mind those are consumables. Food, it's going to run out. So yes, a good baseline is a month of food per head, but that is only buying you time. That is all that is. That is not sustainability, which is what your goal needs to be here. So like you said, having a good garden, having, a way of harvesting, meat, your protein, your vitamins and minerals, all the other nutrients that go along with that. Having, keep in mind the space and resources that are needed for that. So for example, I keep chickens. I have 6 chickens in my coop right now. Great little buggers. Give me 4 eggs every day. But I need something to feed them, right? If I'm not just using the grain that I buy from the store, say the store runs out, catches fire, whatever disaster may come, how am I going to feed those? How am I going to protect those from, stray cats or my dogs or, other people? These are all things to think about. But where community comes into play here, what do you have that your neighbors don't? What do your neighbors have that you don't? How can you guys fill in each other's gaps so that you don't have one family doing everything or one family that's useless? This is where you have your bartering. This is how you have trade, not just, food and, other goods, but goods and services, skills.
Right. With that too, you need to have at least one person, recommend more, that know how to hunt, have the means of hunting wild game. Both large and small. You never know how hungry you are until you try to hunt down a squirrel because there's nothing else. I will reference alone. I mean, nobody's out there taking down bear and eating good for months and months at a time, unless you're that freaking Marine sniper who had like smoked fish in his house that he could have lasted the entire time plus some. But regardless, you need to be able to, he misses baby. You need to be able to hunt wild game, whether that is deer, elk, bear, fish, rabbits, squirrels, any of those. You need to have a way of hunting them.
Hell, man, you referenced alone. I'll reference 1 second after, a book everybody should read.
Agreed. It's on my nightstand. Starvation
is one of the scariest enemies that we may have to face. And that entire book has to deal with the lingering effects of that. It is a persistent hunter. If you can't feed your people, then,
somebody go make
that'll kill you just like anybody else.
And that's a good segue into maintaining security, defending yourself from anybody else that could kill you. So referencing, 1 second after, you were talking about people starving, like what happens when you get that food? That's a valuable resource. People are going to want to take that because not everybody, I'll be honest, man, when shit hits the fan, people are going to do whatever the hell they want, whatever the hell they feel like they need to do. And that includes up to and including killing you for what you have. Make sure you're guarded. Make sure your resources are guarded. I'll be honest with you, man. I don't trust people as far as I can throw them, especially not in that situation. I'm going to assume that you're there not because you're desperate in need of something and you're just a kind folk. You're not going to kill me. I'm assuming you're probably going to kill me.
Well, and the thing is, I don't care how nice you are.
Mm-hmm.
A lot changes when you're watching your family starve.
Yes.
You have to think, am I going to sit here in my nice, society made box and wait for my family to starve? Or as I'm looking at my daughter not eating for the third day, am I going to go get her some food? And it's not a right or a wrong. It's a right or a left. So plan accordingly. Besides, keeping a garden secure, ways to safeguard your food from other things. So, protecting the shelf life of your food. How are you going to store your food? How are you going to preserve your food? Right? Maybe you should look into things like a root cellar. Maybe you should look into tasks and skills like smoking, smoking meat.
Smoking, yes.
There's like 5 or 6 different ways to preserve eggs. If you have a surplus of eggs, egg noodles, salting, glassing. I mean, there is so much that you can do. So much.
You can freeze them, can't you?
I don't know about freezing. I have seen people where they'll scramble them and then they'll dehydrate it. I've seen that too. Like stuff that is like super outside the box. If you can scrap enough, money together, while money still matters marginally, getting a freeze dryer is a huge investment. And, you're talking about making your own stock right there. So a lot of considerations there. But moving on to water. So I threw down in the show notes a month of water per person. That is not exactly efficient or, depending on your space, that is doable at all. Water storage is a
crap ton of water.
Water storage is a complete other monster. And water storage should not be your priority in my humble opinion. Of course you should have water stores. You need a decent water store per person. However, just like food, you cannot store enough water. It's too big. It's too heavy. Too much can happen. Say you go from, fall into winter, and if all of your storage freezes, like think about the damage that causes. Water will go bad eventually, just sitting in a container, right? So what are you doing to protect it from, the different pathogens or other things that can grow in there? So collection and purification should be your 2 priorities with that.
It looks like from the Mayo Clinic, adequate daily fluid intake is about 15.5 cups, 3.7 liters of fluids a day per men, and about 11.5 cups, 2.7 liters of fluids per day for women.
How many liters in a gallon?
Why did you ask me that? Why are you asking me to do math at 10 o'clock at night?
Because I hate you. So 1 liter is 0.2 gallons.
Yeah, so there's 3.7 liters in a gallon. 3.8.
Yeah. So
yeah.
How many liters per male a day did you say?
3.7.
Okay.
So a gallon a day.
Gallon a day. So you don't have the space to store 30 gallons per male that
No.
However, you can be doing an air study, figuring out where you have a renewable, collectible source of water. You can be picking up on chemical filtration system or purification systems like aquatabs or bleach. Please be very careful with the bleach. Iodine tablets. You could be having, renewable ways to, boil water in bulk. You could be, picking up on mechanical filtration systems like the Sawyer, which can be, the minis where you can make a straw or a, push flow or like a pressure flow system. You can be getting gravity systems because you're talking about now with a community in bulk, right? And like I said, this is not a one family conversation. We're talking about a community. We're talking about 2+ families that we're talking about for these preps, right? So something that my immediate community has done, my little cul-de-sac, is we have sourced out water collection barrels, and we've gotten those connected to our gutter systems on 2 houses so far.
Okay.
And that's just a passive way of collecting water.
I need those.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, they're not bad. You can get the 50 gallon, like it's just like a little water drum, but throw that on every corner of your house. You have 200 gallons of water potentially, on tap. But something that's more important than collection, like I said, is, actually sourcing it. Doing your area study, hopping up on, oh gosh, what was the Caltopo? Hopping on Caltopo, looking at your area and finding, streams or stock ponds or lakes or whatever that you can actually be collecting water from, in the long term. So that's something you need to consider highly.
When you do that, though, you need to be very cognizant of purification methods on that. Do not go 100%. Drinking from the source.
Do not make this a medical issue.
Parasites, and bacteria. That's all I'm going to say.
And even more, and that's why we talk about the purification system, right? So your chemical, mechanical, boiling, there's always a way to purify water, always. Something outside of that, though, even more so than your food, is securing your water and your water source. Water is life. Protect your life. If someone controls your water, they control you. Outside of everything else in your home, if you were stuck at home and someone turned off your water, that's the one thing you're worried about. I give you 3 days.
Yeah, 3 days max. And if you're lucky. Yeah.
So, and those aren't happy 3 days. Those are a useful 3 days.
Holy crap, no. So above all else, definitely protect your water and your water source.
So when you think about your, in a community context, right? So what your family has, but what do other families that in your community, what do the other people have for their food, for their water, for the storage of both, right? What do they bring to the table in that? Have you guys started a community garden? Have you guys talked through all of this stuff? Everyone knows about the meme of, oh yeah, man, if anything happens, I'll just go to your house. Don't let that be a reality, right? Be building this community so that, if something does happen, then everybody is okay. You can do more together than you ever can on your own. Hey guys, Seven from the Hard Times Strongmen podcast here to bring a quick word from our newest sponsor, Blackbeard Fire Starters. We first saw Blackbeard Fire Starter a few years ago, and after seeing what the product can do, it's been our kit ever since. Their fire starter rope and their fire plugs are windproof, waterproof, dummy proof. They have an insane burn time, and like anything else that they offer, it just works. Besides their fire starters, they offer an arc lighter, ferro rod, stormproof matches, basically anything that you need to get a fire started. To better equip you, we cherry picked their inventory and made our Hard Time Strongmen Fire Kit. Basically our essentials kit for anything that you could need to get a fire started. But besides that, they're offering 10% off anything in their store when you use the code STRONGMEN. We love the guys at Blackbeard Firestarter. We love what they're doing. We trust them and we trust their products. And we honestly can't recommend them enough. make sure to check them out online at blackbeardfire.com or on Instagram at blackbeardfire. Huge shout out to the guys at Blackbeard Fire for working with us and for bringing the fire. As always, guys, stay in the fight.
Hey everybody, this is 6 and 7 with the Hard Time Strongman podcast, and we are coming to talk to you about our Patreon and Discord.
Hey guys, our patrons get early access to all of our episodes. They get all of our exclusive pre and post shows, all of our spicy takes, all of our rabbit holes that we go on, everything that we want to include in an episode, but we can't because we need to stay on topic. And soon enough, we will be offering digital downloads, guides, everything that we've been working on in the background will soon be available to our patrons. So make sure to check it out.
And come hang out with us on Discord. Speaking of the spicy stuff, this is where we discuss most of it. Once you're there, you will get access to all of our in-depth discussions, including stuff like homesteading, fieldcraft, medical, camping, communications, shooting. You like ARs? Come talk to us about it. You like 4x4 vehicles and prepping? Come talk to us about it.
You like tannerite, thermite, napalm? Come talk to us about it. All of the campfire talks that would get us kicked off of other platforms, it's right there in our Discord. Come join our community.
We're active on Discord every day. We're interacting with members constantly. We have guys from every walks of life coming to contribute their expertise to all of these various fields and subjects that we've been talking about.
Come join the Discord. Come join the Discord. Join our community. Build up that better class of man. Now back to the episode.
So, how many people have said that to you? Because I've had a lot of people say that to me. I just laugh. I'm like, oh, yeah. In my mind, I'm like, no, absolutely not.
I try to keep the prepping part more quiet. So I haven't had that too much. But, from the freeze of 21, people know that I, stayed generally prepared. So I don't live in a community where I'm necessarily worried about that. But, my community, they're more, they know how serious it is. Right. So they're moving that direction. But I don't know about the rest of my neighbors. Neighbors down the street or one street over. You can't count on them to be at the same level that you are. That's why you need to check in on people, get organizing so that you don't have people, knocking on your door. Then you have 3 families plus that are worried about getting food. And you're suddenly have the burden of that at the risk of, having that be a conflict.
Right.
So there's a lot of layers to this.
There is. But let's definitely move on because we still have quite a bit to cover here.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's hit fire. You don't have a lot of notes here. And by a lot of notes, I mean you have none. So let's freeball this and see what we can get.
Fire. I threw fire in there because it is a pillar of survival.
It is.
And when all else fails, that's what you're going to have to work with. But basic short-term preps for, fire, for making and keeping fire, right? Outside of like a rural context where you have a bunch of people with wood burning stoves or fireplaces. And people actually know how to swing an axe and chop wood. Super easy thing. If you're at a point in your community where you can give people or suggest to people a shopping list, Bic lighters.
Yeah.
Super easy. Matches, a matchbook, right? Shameless plug, Blackbeard Fire starters.
Yep.
Super no nonsense, dummy proof stuff. Windproof, waterproof, yada yada. Stuff that I've kept in my kit for years. I know you have too. But things that you can, I would say the plugs honestly would be the easiest one, because there's not a lot of finesse with those things. You rip them in half and you're good to go. Now,
those things are literally dummy proof.
Yeah. So that being said, this one is a little hard to contextualize, right? Everybody needs food. Everybody needs water. Now, you may not be dealing with fire a lot, but it should be something that everybody has. I remember growing up, everybody, whenever we lost power growing up in Oregon, everybody had a drawer that had all the flashlights and the batteries and a matchbook, and everyone just lit candles and you just waited it out, because everybody canned food and everything else. Right. So I don't know what everybody else's context is, but basic ways to make fire should be easily prevalent, or everyone should have at least something. Right. So that's why I say at the bare bones basics, have a Bic lighter, and you can even make a, Ziploc bag for everybody with, a Bic lighter and some tinder and call it a day, because, not everybody has a fireplace even to worry about. But, I guess a different context would be like a gas burning stove, like a grill. I would consider that, because you're talking about that for water purification. You're talking about that for cooking. So what can you speak into with that?
So with this, my mind is going. So natural disaster wise, if you are lucky, you still are connected to city gas. You don't have any leaks. You can hop on, your gas stove and you're good to go. You've got fire. You can cook your meals. Barring that, like you said, charcoal grills, propane grills, wood burning stove, pellets, smokers. You could go as far as
just being able to build a
campfire, your freaking pocket rocket, campfire stoves. Those are what I'm thinking, but long term, those require fuel. And if you can't source those, or if your gas is cut off due to a natural disaster by the city, then you're going to want to be able to source wood somehow. You're going to want to find some form of fuel to be able to build a fire, because you can't just eat cold cut sandwiches the entire time. Number one, because they're going to spoil unless you somehow can keep everything cold. But barring that, like, what are you going to do? Eat grass? Like, you're going to want to cook some meat. You're going to want to cook a meal. Like,
and this is also, once again, this is a community thing, right?
Yes.
So not every single family needs to be cooking at the same time, right? You can pull your resources, have, one fireplace or one grill or one, insert here, and just be, cooking in batches, for bulk food. So, be smart about this, right. And, something that we didn't talk about with like the food and water, but at the start of a disaster, when you're organizing, or even as you're organizing now, when you're not currently in a disaster, having an honest inventory. Right?
Yep.
So, and most of the time it'll be better if you have this already done for your home, so you can show it as an example, and two, as a sign of trust. Right? With your trusted community. Don't be throwing this out to randoms, right? But big thing in leadership is not doing anything that you wouldn't, not asking anybody to do something that you wouldn't do yourself.
Right.
Right. So as an example, as, a sign of trust, however you see this, but like, hey, family A, family B, this is what I have, prepped for food. My idea is to have food for each person for however long. This is my plan for water. This is my plan to make a fire if we need to keep warm, or to cook food, whatever. And then long term, like you said, knowing where and how to source your tinder, your kindling, your fuel.
Ideally, whatever situation you're finding yourself in is going to be a short-term thing, be it, I don't know, wildfire, or, well, I mean, I guess not wildfire because you'd probably be evacuating, but say
a blackout, whatever.
Blackout, yeah. Ideally beforehand, especially if you have a propane grill, go top off your freaking canisters, or buy a second one or a third one.
I was going to say, buy a second canister. Those things last a long time, but buy a second one, keep that one always filled as a general SOP for your house.
I've got it. I've got a second one in sitting in my garage right now.
Just like you should have at least a 5-gallon, jerry can of fuel in your garage.
Yeah. I've got it sitting in storage.
That's what I'm saying though, is it should be just a natural thing. This should be an implied thing for every house. It's just basic things.
So
moving on.
That takes
shelter.
Us into moving on. Shelter. So what have you got? Emergency. I mean, obviously, the house. You've got your trailer tent. Like what have you got shelter wise for emergencies?
So shelter, that's more of a oh my gosh, man, that is like a last resort, like bugging out kind of thing. But for shelter, what I meant when I put that down is your home, right?
Yeah.
So we talked about this in the past about having, just basic tools, knowing how to use your basic tools, having basic supplies, screws, nails, whatever, knowing how to use those. So, we're seeing this a lot with the hurricanes, with tornadoes, natural disasters, right? You have trees coming down on people's homes, right? So in a, disaster context and emergency context, right? One, are you going to be able to use that home anymore? Right? If a 100-year-old oak tree falls down in the middle of, your family of five's house, you can't live there anymore. That's not safe. It's not protecting you from anything. So, does your community have a way to pick that up, to pick up that slack, right? Can your neighbors house you or your family? Can you house your neighbors or their families, right? Things to consider.
Barring that, are there supplies on hand to repair the damage that was done?
Exactly. Or even minor repairs, not even like a tree coming down, but, say something busts out a window, can you patch that up, or a door, or, siding gets ripped off, or shingles, in a minor leak in a roof can, or hell, man, a cracked pipe in winter can have huge consequences.
Yes. Dude, I am so thankful I actually live in a southern state just for the fact that our pipes will never freeze unless, the day after frickin' tomorrow happens.
Oh man, I have a story about this. Okay. So during the freeze in 21, I had, I was like getting, figuring out our inventory, figuring out what we were going to do for the night. And then my wife went to go turn on the faucet and the water stopped running.
Oh.
And I was like, oh crap, because I didn't think about it, but the faucet was on exterior wall. I was helping a neighbor out, and I told him about that. Just like, oh man, I need to figure this out. And he's like, oh, just throw a candle under it. I said, what? He said, yeah, light a candle, put it under, under the pipe, have the faucet on. It'll melt it. You'll be good to go. I did it. Not 5 minutes later, ice melted, broke through, running like nothing happened. He said, after it runs through, put it on a drip.
Let me guess. His name started with J.
R.
Oh, okay. Not who I was thinking about then.
No, not him. Old guy, old dude.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but
that sounds like an old guy solution.
Yeah, but it friggin' worked. And then I threw every other faucet in my house on a drip. And I didn't have to worry about my pipes busting. I was good to go.
Yep.
Yeah. So
God.
Yeah. So knowing those little things, how to help out. I can't tell you how many buddies, my buddy Jay, I went out with him to go help people whose pipes burst. I was out there in like 5-degree weather, helping him fix all that.
Dude, I can't tell you how many times I had to deal with that on the farm until we just said screw it and switched all the piping to PVC.
Oh my gosh, man. Yeah, I can't wait to switch. Like whenever I build a house, I can't wait to make everything out of PEX. Oh, I'm gonna lose my mind. Can't wait.
That was probably my greatest fear living in Indiana during some of our freaking really stupid cold winters was just the pipes freezing.
Horrible. Absolutely horrible.
Never mind the fact that, you couldn't take a hot shower. Like, never mind that. Just the fact of like, oh crap, I need a glass of water. Let me go. Nope.
Ka-chunk. No. Oops.
Mm-hmm.
Something else. I don't think I put it on here, but transportation. That's another huge thing.
Mm.
So during that same freeze, right, the roads froze over 2 or 3 times consecutively. Yeah. So where are you going if you don't have tire chains or studs or a 4x4 vehicle, 4x4, capable vehicle?
As they said in Boondock Saints, where are you going? Nowhere.
So this goes back to your inventory, right? So talk with your neighbors, figure out what everybody has, what your capabilities are. If you don't know what your capabilities are, how are you supposed to do anything?
Mm-hmm.
Are you figuring this all out on the fly? No. Because if there's an emergency, if you have to go pick up somebody's wife or their kids or whatever, and they're not able to, you need to be able to pick up the slack.
Did you mention clothing?
No, I did not.
Yeah. Well,
having to do with shelter.
Yeah. I mean, that isn't shelter.
Is your first shelter. If you think about it.
Yeah, that's true.
Clothing.
I mean,
I had neighbors that had just moved from Northern California right before the freeze. They did not have any winter clothing. And then we went into a 100-year storm. They were both 80 plus years old, and they hid in their bed under the covers the entire 4 days that we did not have power because they weren't able to do anything else without dying.
How did they survive, dude?
By staying under the covers in their bed with their 2 dogs for 4 days. And their annoying younger neighbor checked on them every day to make sure that they were still alive.
I.e. you.
I.e. me. Yeah. Any hoozle. I also gave him hand warmers because, that helps too.
I mean, keep it in mind, just with your home being your castle, you got to make sure that it's secure from, the elements, pests, threats of all kinds. So do your locks work? Do you have any cracks that bugs can get in through? Be it bees or mosquitoes or ants, what have you. I mean,
well, outside of the your household context, right? Community wise, what does security look like for your community? Tipping back to clothing for like 2 seconds, right? So my old man always told me to bring a jacket. So I don't know, maybe, keep up on some extra clothes. And then if you need to, you can flex stuff over, like a good neighbor.
Dude, I just now thought of that. And I think back to my, my emergency supply, especially my winter stuff. And I'm thinking through it. And it's just like, I have 4 of those freaking watch caps extra. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even realize it. I have extra winter stuff tucked away and I didn't realize it.
Yeah. 8% of heat is lost through the head. So you see your neighbor, in his huge jacket with no headgear, and he's freezing. Here's a beanie, man. Don't die.
Well, the best part is we don't have to deal with that here.
Yeah, right. Just throw it away.
But no, I'm not gonna throw that away. But
community wise, right? So security. Yeah. I don't know. You remember when you were a kid and seeing the neighborhood watch signs?
We got them here.
I don't know. Maybe set up a neighborhood watch with your neighbors. Mm-hmm. Maybe set up some SOPs like, hey, if we see this, be concerned. Teach your neighbors, talk with your neighbors about what to look for, what you guys are worried about in your context, in your communities. Maybe talk with your neighbors, if you're going to leave town for a trip. Like, hey, man, me and the wife are going to be out for a couple days over the weekend. Would you just keep an eye on the place? We're not expecting anybody, so nobody should be, hanging out. And then they have your number. I can't tell you how many times our neighbors have called us about our freaking dogs. Like, hey, your dog's out. You want me to do it? Yeah, we talk to them. And, they talk to the animal control and get them back in our house because our dogs are idiots. But we have good rapport with our neighbors. And, they can help us out with that.
That's also something that I have noticed. I mean, coming from Indiana, where a lot of times, people were friendly enough, but we also, kept to ourselves mostly. Like, there was a small community. Like we kept a small community, but everything else, moving to Texas, everybody was friendly. There was some community though. So it was almost like the inverse. Like everybody's friendly, but there's almost no community. And then I moved to Florida and everybody hates you and there's no community.
Like
or at least very
neighbor,
little. Yeah. Stay over there. Yeah. But it all starts with just talking to people. You got to talk to your neighbor. Like my neighbor right across the fence, two of the fences, we have good rapport with them. Like I know the other neighbor. I know the neighbor across the street. I don't talk to them ever, but these guys next to us, I mean, we talk to them all the time. Like, hey, yeah, we're going out of town. Like if anybody shows up, 12 gauge them in the face.
I can't tell you.
Yeah.
Like, so the best thing that we did, outside of, when we first moved in, going off and, knocking on doors and talking to people, I can't tell you how good it was for us to start that garden in the front yard. Starting that garden in the front yard, actually working out in that garden, on the weekends during the day when, people were out and about and lively, but out there just working the dirt, making ourselves available to talk to people. It was huge. People, oh, what are you doing? Where are you playing? It just started so many conversations. And, with the future promise of, oh yeah, whenever we get this, and just being able to offer it to people, when we had a big harvest, being able to go, it's like, hey, here's that zucchini I was talking about. I can't tell you how many connections that made for us. Absolutely huge. Moving on to power. So that one is a tricky one for several reasons.
Oh God, there's so many reasons.
But there were a few things that I can think of, personally, right? So during the freeze, we had a couple neighbors with generators. And, when I went over there to check on them, like, hey, we have our generator. I got my generator running. Do you guys have anything that you need to charge? Do you guys, want to come over? I hooked up to my microwave. You guys can microwave something. Or, we have a neighbor with a bigger generator. And granted, we didn't need it for the freeze. Obviously, I just threw whatever was perishable in the garage and it was frozen. But, if you lost power during the summer, neighbors who have generators and be like, hey, do you need anything that you need to throw in my fridge or my freezer? Make yourself available that way. Our best buddies down here, something really sweet that they did for us because they had power and we did not, was they brought over like 5 of those little portable power banks.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, you guys need to charge your phones? Like, here you go. And we were able to keep our phones going throughout the 4 days. And it's like, oh my gosh, that was such a blessing to us,
Right.
And those same buddies, they're like, hey, you guys are idiots, come by every now and then and you guys can warm up. And, it was a 10-minute drive, 20 minutes with all the, the crappy roads and everything. But we have a 4x4 vehicle that can make the drive. But while I was at home, chopping wood, checking on neighbors, keeping the fire going, I was able to send my wife and my boy over to, our friends where they could warm up for a couple hours, take a warm shower and, just, help bear it a little better.
Yeah.
But as far as your community preparedness goes, like, was your plan look like? Do you have those little power banks? Do you have an inverter, for your vehicle or whatever else? Do you have a generator? If you're a little farther along on the whole preparedness thing than I am, do you have a home generator, that can power your entire home? Because then you're looking into, like you are the warming station. You are where people need to go to help preserve their food or to cook or whatever else, which is a big responsibility, but it's a huge blessing too, because then, you're building that community. You're taking care of people. That's huge. You take care of people, they'll take care of you.
One of the big things we have here is a lot of people are going to solar panels.
Yes, I've seen that too.
Granted, they're trying to just offset the rising freaking monthly cost from Duke Energy. But if the power goes out, like you still have power. Granted, if it's a sunny day. Yeah, potentially. As long as it's a sunny day.
Well, in Texas, I've talked to several companies, and the biggest drawback that I found, which that's an easy way to fix, was that you still rely on the grid, essentially. So if the grid goes down, your solar doesn't keep running. Like, it doesn't run your house.
Really?
Which is odd, right? Because it has a controller, essentially. So basically, it's like a back pay kind of thing with the solar versus the grid. Now, if you have a buddy who's, electrically inclined and can, reroute that to fix that issue for you potentially, then that's not really an issue, right?
Yeah.
But needless to say, whenever, we talked about this in our homesteading episode, but, my home's going to be primarily solar powered whenever we get to building on some land. But
right.
Yeah, huge consideration.
Yep. Make sure if you do that, make sure you have a bank of batteries to be storing that energy so that when there is, nighttime, obviously, or cloudy day where you can't get the power from the solar panels, you have extra energy stored up. Now, down here in Florida, I wonder if that's the same thing where if the grid goes down, you're SOL. I don't know because I don't have solar power and we have never run into that issue somehow.
Well, another thing to consider too is whatever your power solution is, making sure that it will cover the adequate amp hours.
Correct.
The kilowatt amp hours for whatever you need to run. Now, for a lot of that can be amenities, but for a lot of people, it may be a necessity, for medical equipment. Even if you live in freaking Arizona, you need your AC or you're going to die. Yep. So, they'd be melting car paint out there. It's not
wrong.
Not a conducive way to live. But long-term solutions for power, right? So, think if you have a scenario like, not necessarily like a 1 second after where you have an EMP go off and you lose everything, but say you have long-term blackouts, right? Someone attacks the grid even, and the grid goes down. Now it's still there, but it's not usable, right? You can still use electric power, but you no longer have somebody holding your hand. What does that look like? Can you use, like you said, solar power, hydropower, wind power? Do you have natural gas reserves or, ways to utilize that? Different ways to store your food or preserve your food. A lot goes into, producing and utilizing power as we know it. Now, something that, there is a lot to be said about reducing your dependency on power potentially, right? That's probably a good place to start.
We said about living off the grid too.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. The less dependent we have to really be on the grid itself, the better off you honestly are. I mean, that's going to lower your electric bills right off the bat, but you can't fully get away from it.
But amenities are amenities, right? It's nice to have. There's no problem with living within your means with the amenities that you currently have, but
correct.
That will never be an excuse for not being prepared for, if those are taken away from you.
Right. I mean, we've seen it what happens when the internet goes down, period. People lose their minds.
Mm-hmm.
Or when the power goes out, people lose their ever-loving minds. We've seen it time and time again. It's been covered in the news. It's been covered in books. It's not like there isn't a precedence of this kind of thing happening. Humans will be humans, period. So what we're basically just saying is just think ahead. Play chess when everybody else is playing checkers.
Right. Communication. So how are you going to communicate with your, not just your family, but your greater community? So we just had somebody on the podcast. The episode's going to be released on Saturday. Atropos Concepts. We've talked to Civil Sentinel in the past, right? So radio communication is absolutely huge. how can you adequately, what am I trying to say? How can you equip your community in this way? Right? Because not everyone's going to be spun up on the same equipment that you are.
Correct.
Are your neighbors close enough to where you can just walk by and, walk over and talk to them? Are you blessed to have the cell towers still? Are you using radios? Are your neighbors even open to that? These are things that need to be considered. These are things that need to be talked about.
You're lucky enough to be able to charge things. I fully recommend having just a set of radios, with extra batteries, obviously, but making sure that others have radios with backup batteries,
Right.
I mean, you and I have
way to charge those
past.
batteries.
Right. Exactly. And you and I have joked around in the past about, going over to your neighbor's house with a tote and just being like, hey man, hold on to this. Don't open it, but hold on to this. And just throw it in your garage or something. And sure enough, in there is like a set of radios or something, some supplies for emergencies.
Well, and so, talking with my neighbors, right? Mm-hmm. One of my older neighbors, older gentleman, he's really passionate about being prepared for emergencies. That's what he used to love to do. And when he was in California, he in fact had a whole Connex, 20-foot Connex that he filled with just clothing for children. And that was the ministry that he made for his church. If kids were in need or families were in need, he, just had all these supplies that he could offer people. He loved being essentially a benefactor. That's what he loved to do because he was in a position where he could do that. So one of the things that he did with me, or he asked me to do, is he gave me, some funds. And he's like, hey, I want to get set up with radios. And he ended up buying, a Baofeng for every household that he was worried about. And I'm using just my general knowledge of radios and the Baofeng and some software on my computer, and I'm programming all these radios. I'm going to even type out a card, laminate it so that, it's dummy proof, but it's a $20 investment per household. And they're going to have every National Weather Service. They're going to have reliable channels that they can reach out to their neighbors on if they no longer have their cell phone. And it doesn't even have to be that complicated. Hell, man, you can go to Walmart and get a blister pack of little CB radios.
Oh, yeah. Something simple.
Man, something happens. Hit me up on channel 2. Let's go.
Yeah. Or some freaking batteries in it and you're good to go.
Yeah, exactly. And then last point I had on here, unless you have anything else, man, I want to talk about kids and pets.
Because just give security, or do you want to hit security?
Did we not talk about security? You already talked about that.
We kind of did. I mean,
all right, let's tack it down then.
I mean, honestly, yeah, we kind of skipped over some things, but I don't think it's worth going back. Here's
the thing, right? So our general audience, you guys, I trust that you are at least comfortable with firearms, right? So if you do not own firearms, right? So get a firearm, get proficient in it, but don't neglect your neighbors, right? This is an excellent opportunity to have your neighbors over for supper and talk to them about basic, firearms information and safe use of firearms, right? Thinking about, like disaster scenarios, like 1 second after, thinking about, the base old school traditional militia, right? Every citizen needs to know how to use this, right? If not just for general safety, but to protect your community. So what do your neighbors have? Do they have, AR? Do they have 30-day special? Do they have a break action, 12 gauge? What do you have to work with here? And do you actually trust these people with these firearms? If not, fix that. You should be at a point to where you can instruct people and instruct them well.
Right.
So please do that. You need to be able to rely on people. You need to know that your neighbors have your back, and they need to know that you have theirs. So on that same vein, right? So we talked about RSAs a little bit. We'll do our, a full episode on that in the future. But knowing your neighborhood, knowing your immediate area, right? Not just during the day, but at night, right? Think about, from a security standpoint, avenues of approach, key terrain, cover and concealment, all the things that we've talked about in the past. But you're not in some notional, operating environment anymore. You are home. Right. So, what does that look like? And when you go out and you look out at your neighborhood and your, general, close environment, do your neighbors see the same things that you see? If not, you should have a conversation with them.
I hate when you ask questions like that, because my mind immediately goes to no. I guarantee no.
Yeah. But it's something to think about, right? Because guaranteed your neighbors don't think the same way that you do, but they're an asset anyways. You are an asset anyways, right? So share that.
Mm-hmm. It is hard to get people into the same mindset perception that you and I are in, just because we know what to look for. We've been there. We've done that. A lot of these people have lived their lives in ignorant bliss, so they don't know what to look for. And I like that you bring that up, because it is our job to inform them. And that's honestly what we're trying to do here with all of our series. We are trying to get everybody spun up. You may not end up at the same level of skill or knowledge that we are. Hell, we might not even be the same level of skills and knowledge as you are. You may have such a leg up on us that, you laugh at us half the stuff that we're putting out, but still, it doesn't matter. Knowledge is knowledge. And I say it time and time again, you are never not a student.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Something to think about too, right? Is I think about all the time. Think about whenever you watch or you read a book or you watch a movie and something bad happens. In some movies it lasts longer than those, but think about that first 20 minutes where all the side characters, right, are busy losing their minds. And oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I can't use the grocery store anymore. Or, oh, they tore up my baseball field. Or, oh, oh this, oh that. And everyone's losing their minds. And at that point, you're wasting time and resources trying to wrap your head around your current situation.
Right.
That's an essential time where things need to be happening. Right? So the more we can teach people, the more you talk to people, the more that you prep your communities for this sort of thing, the more you have these conversations, the more you get people in that headspace, the less of a shock it is, right? No longer is it, oh my gosh, my power went out. What am I going to do? Oh, my daughter. Oh, but it's not, it's not a skip in their thought process. It's, oh, my power went out. I'm going to go in my garage and get that tote, just like Six told me to keep in here in case something happened. Because I know that there's a wool blanket, batteries, a radio that he told me what channel to go to talk to him, and a couple canned, things of food. Or, people will know what to do so that you're not wasting time on getting people in that headspace.
Yeah. Moving on. Let's hit up.
Moving on.
Kids and pets.
Kids and pets. This isn't a long talking point. I just wanted to bring this up as a consideration, as we are both dads.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone else is dads.
About to be a dad.
You're a dad. It has a heartbeat. I heard it.
So did I. Multiple times.
Yay, baby. Anywho,
Yay. Yes.
Something that people don't really think about in their preps, or, if they don't have children, are children, right? So like we talked earlier with kids, or with food, kids can be picky eaters.
Mm-hmm.
Kids, bless their hearts, require entertainment so they don't drive themselves and you nuts while you're trying to get everything else handled. Kids get into mischief, and God help them, they don't always listen to you right away every single time. This can be a security concern, and you should keep that in mind. Right? So kids running off, kids getting into stuff they shouldn't be getting into, kids playing with things they shouldn't, this, that, the other, at all, etc. Right? Mm-hmm. Something that we talked about during, gosh, what episode was that? One of our situational awareness episodes, right? It doesn't cost you anything to look out for other people's kids, right? So if you see them doing something they shouldn't, or getting into stuff, or, potentially something bad going on, help mom and dad handle that. And so I just want to say with pets.
Go ahead. Oh my God.
I did want to say with pets, if your pet isn't useful, it's just another mouth to feed. And if it's just another mouth to feed and there's not a lot of food to go around, it might just be food. Train your dog.
I don't even want to think that way, but at the same time, it's just like, as much as I do, that I do not like yap dogs. Mm-hmm. Now, I mean yap dogs. I mean these little 15-pound fuzzy designer handbag dogs who have no other purpose than to be someone's emotional support pet and offer absolutely nothing to the world. I hate them. They're cats. They're an annoyance to me. I don't think of them as dogs. And at the same time, they can be useful. They can be a security thing, but they need to be properly trained. Like you said, train your dog. So at the end of it all, keep in mind all the things you're going to need commodity-wise, especially utilitarian-wise. We're talking flashlights. We're talking phone chargers. We're talking maps, hand foot warmers, batteries, handles, all the above.
Extras.
If you need extras, fuel for things, keep all of this in mind, because you're going to want to have, like you said, extras, and make sure that they actually work. Don't go to throw on that extra tank of propane and realize that it's empty.
Mm-hmm. And we had kind of a hard time in this episode with this specifically, but do not think of this just in the context of your own family. Don't think of this in the context of just what you have, just what you bring to the table, just what, these preps are for you and yours, right? The whole point of this episode was getting with your community, organizing with your neighbors, your communities, talking about these subjects, right? Talking about these preps, what you have, but getting together and seeing where everybody's at. Getting together, what do you have? What do you have? What do you have? Where's everybody else, sit in this? And then how can we make this even better? How can we do even better together, right? Pooling your resources, because you can, if everybody pooled their resources so that they could buy food preps or buy ways to purify water, exponentially more than what you'd be able to do on your own. Not to mention, not just relying on yourself for food, water, whatever, but having a neighbor that says, hey, my garden's doing really great this year. I've got veggies and fruits, or I've got veggies and starches. Another neighbor who's like, hey, I'm a farmer. I've got, 5 heads of beef and we're going to be good on, on meat. Having another, and maybe this is you, having another neighbor who's like, hey, I've got 6 ARs in, my safe. We're good to go on security. Like I'll get everybody spun up on this and, we'll be solid. But what do you have, not only in your household, but what can you bring to the table for your greater community? And how can you leverage that in your community to set up your community both for short-term and for long-term success? With that being said, guys, this was, I guess, not a short episode, but
not even remotely.
We just wanted to give you guys a quick word on that. This is stuff that we've all talked, we talked about all the stuff in prior episodes, but we want you to, to shift your mindset a little bit. Mm-hmm. So, as you're listening to this, if you have questions for us, if you want to reach out to, other guys that may be in your area so you can build this community, if you want to get better together and, really just maximize your potential here, email us, let us know. You can reach out on our email at htsmpodcast@htsm.io. We have a Discord. We're on Patreon. We're on YouTube. Spotify allows you to ask questions and give feedback. On IG, we're Hard Time Strongman Podcast. Reach out and get together with people, build this community up so that we can fill in the gaps. Six, you have anything?
And this was pretty comprehensive. I know there's probably some holes of stuff we missed, but at the same time, this was a great episode. This was a lot of things. I'm glad that we can finally start putting things into perspective, things into context for you guys.
Tying things together. Yeah.
If we missed anything, if you have other suggestions, please, dear God, hit us up. Join us on Discord. Feel free to talk to us about pretty much anything, in a notional context.
No holds barred. The beautiful thing about owning and operating a podcast is that we can talk about wherever we want to, however many times we want to talk about it. So if we miss something, we'll probably talk about it later. Mm-hmm. So guys, we're talking about town meetings, how to build out your community and get your community prepared. As always, we're the Hard Time Strongman Podcast, showing you about better class and man. Stay in the fight.
Stay in the fight.
Hey guys, this is 6 and 7 with the Hard Time Strongman Podcast. Wanted to take a second to do a mental health check-in and to tell you all about the 988 Crisis Lifeline. So the 988 Lifeline is a national network of local crisis centers that provides free and confidential emotional support to people in suicidal crisis or emotional distress 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in the United States. You can reach the Lifeline at 988lifeline.org, or you can call or text 988 to get help, to get someone real on the phone.
Every struggle is different. Every struggle is hard. But you are not alone in whatever you're going through. As someone who has used the 988 crisis line, I fully recommend that if you're feeling any of those feelings of depression, suicide, hopelessness, get in touch with them immediately. They will help you. They will listen to you.
Once again, guys, you can reach the Lifeline at 988lifeline.org, or you can call or text them at 988. As always, guys, stay in the fight.
Stay in the fight.